Tell me a story. Angela smiled while shaking her head. Her little sister was getting old enough to enter a rebellious phase, and she was there for it. What kind of story do you want to hear, Hannah? She was walking past a small bookshelf with the children's books on it and slowly let her fingertips wander over the spines. Most of them had once been in her own room, but had long since been passed down to her sister. Mum and Dad had read to her from these books night after night, and even though she could hardly remember it, seeing them lined up so neatly still made her smile. A scary one? The defiance in the small voice made the teenager chuckle. There were over 10 years between them, but the little girl still kinda reminded her of herself. This urge to misbehave. There are no scary books in this house, Hannah, she replied, and turned around to look at her sister, already tucked into bed and in this still very much childlike bedroom. The small forehead furrowed as she shook her head defiantly. You know scary stories? It sounded almost accusatory, and Angela laughed out loud as she looked at the overly serious expression on her sister's face. That I do, Hannah. That I do. But Mum and Dad would kill me if I told you. You know? She wasn't really opposed to the idea, Angela admitted, but only to herself. But being begged was nice from time to time. And also, she didn't want Hannah to run crying to their parents once they returned tomorrow, telling them that she had scared her. I won't tell them. I promise. Angela chuckled again, then briskly walked back over to the bed and kissed her sister's forehead. You promise? Hannah had this defiant look in her eyes as she nodded. Yeah, Angela thought. She really did remind her of herself. And at that age, she had been just as bad a liar. Still, it wasn't like making up some slightly scary story would hurt her sister. If Mum or Dad asked her about it, she could just brush it off. Angela looked around the room to find some kind of inspiration. She could see the shelf with the books, but using a well-known children's story and turning it dark might make her sister even more defiant. Her eyes kept wandering. A carpet. No, you can't have a carpet monster. The bed itself? Nah. There are no monsters under the bed. A toy box? Angela shivered. That story definitely wasn't age-appropriate. She looked up and could see the window. Behind the pane, she could see a tree and the first stars coming up in the early night. They were on the second floor, she thought. There was the web of a spider in the upper right corner. Either Mom had overlooked it, or the arachnid had moved in since the last cleaning. Well, it definitely was great for inspiration, at least. She softly stroked Hannah's forehead as she sat down on the edge of the bed. This was kind of fun, she thought to herself. With Mum and Dad gone for the night and only returning tomorrow, they had told her to watch her sister, and if she was being completely honest, even though she would never admit it, she really liked doing it. So, Hannah, do you know why Mom always tells you to watch out for spiderwebs? She couldn't hide her malicious grin as she asked the question and watched gleefully as her sister tried to come up with an answer. Because they're dirty? Angela laughed, but nodded. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. They collect dust and dead insects, after all. But that's only one of the reasons, you know. She watched Hannah looking up at her now with a tense yet expectant expression on her face. You know, there was a story, long, long ago, about a man living around these parts. Angela watched her sister closely. She didn't want to miss the signs if her story got too scary for the little girl. To all the other people around, he looked like a good man, you know. Yeah, he lived alone, but he always went to church, helped his neighbors shovel their driveways during winter, and volunteered at any chance he got. So, like Mr. Myers from up the street? Angela could see the smile on her sister's lips, but immediately shook her head. It wouldn't be nice if Hannah got scared of their neighbors. Yes, but also no. This man I'm talking about, he was living alone and a bit further out, close to the edge of the town. Hannah nodded, as if she understood. You know, almost like a spider. You don't see them sleeping in the center of their web, right? This time, her sister seemed to think about it before she finally nodded. Not that he was a spider, no. That would be silly. No, but this man, he was well liked, even respected all around these parts. He also really, really liked children and would come to the playground from time to keep watch. Hannah's brow furrowed again, and Angela quickly bit her tongue. This story was going in the wrong direction. Mom doesn't like guys sitting at the edge of the playground watching the children, she heard her sister say, and nodded immediately. Yes, that's right. But this story is different. You see, the man didn't have any bad intentions. He just liked the people of this town. That's all. Someone even brought up the idea that he could become the mayor one day. But he didn't want to. You see, the man was happy, just being who he was, helping the people all around him. Angela could see her sister narrowing her eyes. She was displeased with the story. That's not scary at all. Even though she tried to stay serious, Angela couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yeah, you're right. But that's just the beginning, Hannah. Don't worry. It'll get plenty scary soon. So, where was I? Yeah. The man, you see, was kinda strange to look at. He was tall, much taller than me or you or Mom or Dad. And he had this bald head, you see, which one day became a problem. As he was out, walking through town, looking for anyone who might need some help, some of the kids around town, not the young ones, but a bit older, they saw him. Like, as old as you? Angela heard her sister asking and had to stop for a moment to keep herself from rolling her eyes. Not quite, silly. I mean, teenagers, but young ones, 13-year-olds and the like. They were running around as a group, and they spotted that man. No one knows why they did it, or what they were trying to do. Maybe they were just thinking of it as a bit of fun, but they started shouting insults at him. She could see her sister now looking disturbed and got on quickly. They were calling him mean names, you know, like freak and creep and so on. Hannah was still keeping her eyes narrow. Did he chase them off? Tell their parents? Angela chuckled, but shook her head. No, you see, he was completely harmless. He tried talking to them. He wanted to tell them that words can hurt too, just like Mom told us. But these kids, they weren't as nice. They started calling him even worse stuff and even began throwing things at him. Of course, some adults came by, but they only saw the children hurling stuff at the man, then running away. She watched closely for any sign of disbelief in her sister's face, but found nothing. The girl seemed eager for her to continue. You see, Hannah, that is how rumors get started. You and I know the full story, but the adults arriving too late only got part of the picture. To them, it looked like the man tried to get close to the kids, and they were defending themselves. But that's wrong. It's unfair. Angela smiled at her sister's rightful indignation. You're absolutely right, but that doesn't matter. Sometimes, if enough people believe something, it doesn't matter anymore what has really happened. Of course, the people who knew the man very well came together to find the truth. They thought of this incident just like you, that it was unfair and wrong to accuse the man of something he hadn't done. It didn't take the people long to find the children and ask them directly in front of their parents. Can you guess what happens next? She could see her sister beaming with joy. They told him the truth. Angela kept herself from smiling and put on a solemn face as she shook her head softly. No, sadly. You see, when the kids were confronted, and especially in front of their parents, they didn't want to admit that they were in the wrong. So one by one they lied, so their parents wouldn't get mad at them. She could see her sister's smile fade. They were probably too ashamed to admit what they did, so they all said the same thing. The man had tried to come after them, and they had told him to stop, but he hadn't, so they had defended themselves. Hannah looked shocked and tried to say something, but Angela already held up her hand to stop her. You know when you do something bad and Mom or Dad find out? That feeling you get? That you can stay out of trouble if you just keep lying? Yeah, that's the same thing those kids felt back then. Only you or I, we know that that is bad, and we know that we will have to come clean sooner or later. Right? She saw her sister nodding earnestly. That's good, Hannah, because sooner or later, such a lie will come back to you. And even if you manage to convince people that you speak the truth, someone else will get the blame and be punished. And then, not only did you do something bad and lie about it, but you're also responsible for someone else being blamed. You get that, right? Again, her sister nodded, but the look in her eyes made Angela queasy. Maybe it was better to stop the story, she thought. It wasn't much of a scary tale, but at least she got a moral point across. Somehow. A small hand shot out from under the blanket and grabbed her by the wrist, as if her sister had just read her thoughts. What happened then? Angela smiled softly and stroked her cheek. I don't think this story is right for you, Hannah. Maybe we can do this another time. There it was again. This defiance in her sister's eyes. She seemed so determined, so focused on proving something, that Angela couldn't help but stop. The story isn't even scary yet. I want to know what happens next. Angela wanted to shake her head, but that look in her eyes made her waver. She stroked her sister's cheek and let out a sigh. Okay. So, the people who went to the kids' houses came away feeling even worse. They had believed the man at first, but now it looked like he was lying. Of course, there were some of them who could see that those teenagers weren't telling the truth. But most of the adults either stepped back or changed sides. From then on, everything the man did was looked at with suspicion by a lot of the townsfolk. People at church started avoiding him. He found himself sitting in his pew practically alone. The next time he volunteered, some told him not to come. Everywhere he went, men and women he had known his whole life now looked at him with these cold stares. He wasn't welcome anymore near the playground as well, which must have hurt him worse than anything else. Hannah looked at her with this sad expression. Did the man leave town? Go somewhere far, far away? No, Angela replied. You see, the man really did love this town. He loved the people and its history and everything about it. His house was here as well, and he couldn't imagine simply leaving everything behind. Besides, he knew that he hadn't done anything wrong, so he thought that if he was the one to run away, people would think badly of him. Do you understand? Hannah nodded. So, he tried to ride it out. Instead of hiding, he volunteered even more often. Instead of keeping silent, he greeted everyone he came across as friendly and loudly as he could. Instead of crying, you could hear him laughing throughout town. Did the people forgive him? Angela put on a sad smile and shook her head again. You see, the people, or at least some of them, mostly the parents of the kids that had started this whole mess, now looked at him differently. Everything he did seemed suspicious to them. And now, with this change, they thought they had been right all along. That it was all an act. Soon, they started whispering to each other, using the same insults their kids had shouted at him. And with those talks, more rumors started. The kids responsible for it all, of course, joined in, egged on by their parents. One of them started the rumor that the man was sitting in his own basement every night, talking to the spiders down there, because they were the only ones who would listen to him. Another told people that he had looked into the man's window and seen nothing but daddy longlegs everywhere. That's how his nickname started. And from the children, those stories got to the parents. Before the man knew it, people were calling him by that name, laughing at him behind his back. Of course, he knew all about it. He could hear them very well. And slowly but surely, people stopped bothering to hide their disdain for him. Hannah sighed, and Angela stopped. Her younger sister looked at her with this sad expression in her eyes. That's not a scary story. It's a sad one. The poor man didn't do anything. She had to nod in agreement, but then gave her sister a mischievous smile. Don't worry, Hannah. It's not over yet. It'll get plenty scary soon. I just had to tell you the first part, so you know why what happened really happened. She could see the confusion on her sister's face and made a mental note to no longer go on too many tangents. This was harder than she had expected, coming up with some story on the fly. As I said before, the man really tried not to let that stuff bother him. He still smiled, but now the people could see tears in his eyes. He greeted everyone, but now some would change sidewalks whenever they saw him come in their direction. He still went to church, but now no one wanted to sit anywhere close to him. I think what broke him truly was when the priest pulled him aside and asked him, as friendly as he possibly could, to no longer show up in church, since the other people were scared of him. He got pushed out of his community, and hardly anyone still stayed by his side. There were some, of course, but even they didn't want to be seen with him. It was from then on that the man they called Daddy Longlegs pretty much disappeared. He never returned to church, but some people said they saw him linger about when the service began outside the cemetery. People didn't see him walking around town anymore, but from time to time, someone would spot him sitting in the shadows. His loud voice could still be heard, but now it wasn't greeting people, but he was crying in his home. She could see her sister shaking her head slightly with the same sad expression on her face. Day after day, it went on like that. Only now, other kids started throwing stuff at him if they saw his shadow between the houses, or screamed at him to leave them alone. The people around only heard the kids crying out, and so the whole town started to hate this innocent man. He stopped going out at all after a while, at least during the day. The only time people still saw him was in the middle of the night, when he silently walked around the streets, hiding from oncoming cars and others, taking a midnight stroll. He got pushed into the shadows by the hate of the town. But you know, living such a life, having something like that happen to you, it changes everything about you. Angela felt her sister's eyes burrowing into her. She didn't look up for dramatic effect, but continued. Now, even the adults were starting to pass by his house and stealing glances in his windows. According to some of them, the place was a mess. What had formerly looked like a normal home was turning into a dust-filled dump full of spiderwebs, but from time to time, they could still hear him crying in there. I'm sure there were people who felt bad for him. Some who had never joined in with the others must have tried to talk to him, even if it was in secret. But the man never once opened his door for anyone again. Weeks passed by, with the grass on his lawn growing longer and longer, and while the people tried to go back to how things were, his shadow had now invaded their lives as well. I don't know if it was because they knew that they had shunned an innocent man, or if the hate they'd spewed had somehow infected the people of this town, but the whole atmosphere started to change. The weather slowly got colder as winds with a terrible chill began to blow through the town. People got sick with the flu everywhere, and every night, men, women, and children still talked about how they could hear the crying of Daddy Longlegs in their dreams. She could feel the hand holding onto her wrist squeezing her a bit, but her sister's eyes told her that she wanted to hear more. Fine, Angela thought, and put on a solemn face again. As fall slowly turned to winter, snow started to fall. It was far too early, the people back then remarked, and the snow itself looked and felt strange. It wasn't as white as it should be, and instead had those unnatural grey splotches in it before it even reached the ground. You could feel the ice crystals in there poking your skin if you touched it with your bare hands. If you tried to make a snowball out of it, the palms of your hands would feel frozen. Normally, you would hear children laughing outside if the snow started to pile up. But that winter was different. It felt like a thick blanket had been draped over the town, muffling all the joy and suffocating the people beneath it. Some of the women went to the priest to ask for his opinion, but even he could only shake his head. He told them to pray and wait for an answer, since he himself had none. Do you know why, Hannah? The child, still staring up at her, looked around with this strange expression. Because he had sent the man away as well? Angela smiled. Exactly. He wasn't innocent either. By that time, none of them were. What do you think? Hannah was shaking her head, then started nodding. Then, one day, during the worst kind of snowfall yet, people started to realize something. The crying they had heard all those weeks had stopped. And when they realized it, suddenly it felt like there was no sound anymore in the whole town. No people, no cars, nothing. Even the church bells didn't manage to break through the silence. The men and women finally realized what they had done and went to the man's house to ask for forgiveness. Bullshit! Hannah! Angela chided her. Don't you ever let Mom hear that language. Her sister looked up at her defiantly. That's bullshit, Angie. They would never go and apologize after all that. She couldn't help but smile at her sister's sudden outburst. Well, maybe you are right, because according to the legend, the police chief was with them. He was the father of the leader of the group of kids who had started this mess. They went to the house and knocked, but got no answer, so he forced open the door. You know, maybe that was his plan all along, to go in there and blame the man for everything, right? Angela looked at her sister, now nodding in agreement, still completely fixated on the story. Whatever it was they meant to do there, they were too late though. The house was a complete mess. There was dust and spider webs everywhere, from the kitchen to the bedroom. It looked like no one had been in the main part of the house in months. So they checked upstairs and found the same thing. Can you guess where they finally found what they were looking for? Hannah's eyes got wide. The basement? She hissed, and Angela nodded. Exactly. Down in the basement, where they only went after checking everything else, they finally found it. Well, him. He was still sitting there, in the corner. His arms were hugging his long legs to his body, while he was wearing his Sunday best. Only, as I said before, they were late. Far too late. The man had died weeks ago when the snow first started to fall, and all they could see now was a corpse, almost mummified and full of daddy long legs. When the police chief softly touched him with the tip of his boot, thousands of tiny spiders fell from the man and crawled all over the floor. Angela watched in glee as her sister jerked back, then squeezed her wrist with all her might. eat him? Hannah asked, but she just chuckled in response. No. Daddy Longlegs don't eat people. They were probably down there to keep him company, I think. He had never done anything to anyone, after all. That's creepy, but still sad. Angela patted her sister's head and smiled. Well, the people of the town thought exactly like you as well. After the police chief and the others emerged and told others of what they had seen, new rumors started to spread. About how Daddy Longlegs was eaten by his own kind, how they had sucked him dry until he was nothing but a husk, about how he would have plotted his revenge by speaking to those tiny critters. Hannah seemed disturbed again. How would they know that? No one had talked to him, right? That's, again, right? Angela nodded and gave the girl a wink. You're right. Well, what you said is probably the truth. But as I've told you before, sometimes when enough people believe in something, the truth doesn't matter anymore, right? She could see her sister nodding again in response. And that is probably also why what happened next happened at all. You see, the townsfolk loved spreading rumors by that point. Never before had it been this bad here, but every time someone told a story about the man, things got changed, and the rumors started to grow. Soon, people were talking about this misshapen man who had terrorized children all throughout town, who had been a monster his whole life. He had lived alone in the basement and talked to the critters. His family had abandoned him, or even been buried by him in a hole full of spiders. He had been such a foul man that the priest had had to protect his congregation from him. So they started lying? Angela nodded. Yes, it probably started out as nothing but entertainment, but those rumors seemed to get a life of their own. Months passed, half a year maybe. Now almost all of the people in town had started believing that this poor man had been a monster all along, hell-bent on bringing disaster upon them. That's so mean, Hannah blurted out, and Angela shot her a glance that made her shrink back. Then, one evening, something did happen. It was at the police chief's house. He claimed he had heard footsteps outside, and when he went out, he could see a giant footprint right in the middle of his wife's flower bed. It was far too big for a normal man, like the guy must have been as tall as 2 stories of a house. And as he looked up and back, he saw something that made him scream. There, on the 2nd floor, a window stood open. The one of his son, who had started those rumors in the first place. His screaming alerted all the neighbors around, and as he ran back inside and up the stairs, he could already feel it before he found it. The room where his son should be sleeping was empty. All they found were a few daddy longlegs making a trail from the window to the empty bed. Angela could see her sister already pulling up the blanket. The same thing happened again and again. All the children that had insulted him and turned the town against him disappeared from their rooms one by one. Their parents never heard them scream, but close to each and every house they would find a single footprint, far too big to be of a normal human being. She felt her sister's fingernails digging into the skin of her wrist. You see, reality doesn't matter if enough people believe otherwise. The men and women of this town had turned him into a monster when all he had wanted his whole life was just to live in peace. Since then, people say that Daddy Longlegs roams the streets at night. He's tall enough to look into your window. Sometimes, when the wind starts blowing, the breeze will carry his cries all throughout town as he looks for children who lie and can't admit the truth. And if he finds out that there is one in this town again, he will come for you. Once it's dark, open your window and drag you out into the night. Hannah screamed into the blanket, and Angela suddenly realized that this story had taken too dark a turn. But it's all right, Hannah. It's not like he'll ever go after the good children. He liked them very, very much, and I'm sure would have greeted you with a big smile. She could feel her sister's hand shaking and stroked her cheek softly again before giving her a kiss on the forehead. You told me you wanted to hear a scary story, right? Hannah nodded, and Angela slowly stood up from the corner of the bed. If you're scared, I'm always close by, so don't worry about calling out to me, okay? Reluctantly, the small hand finally let go of her wrist, and Angela made a mental note to check back on her after she had brushed her teeth. Now, it's time to go to sleep, and tomorrow, Mom and Dad will be back, okay? She could see Hannah nodding, but also looking around the room, then up to the window. Maybe she had gone too far, Angela thought. Well, she would keep her door open, just in case her sister got nightmares. Good night, Angela said as she turned and walked out of the room. The air felt strangely cold in the house as she made her way to the bathroom, still thinking about what she could do to somehow make this situation better. Mom would freak out if Hannah suffered from nightmares from now on. But that was a problem for tomorrow. It was not like she could change anything about it now. She opened the bathroom door and almost screamed. A spider, no, a Daddy Longlegs was sitting on the radiator below the light switch, and for a single moment, she had even scared herself. Angela chuckled, shook her head, then suddenly heard a scream behind her and whirled around. She was running up the hallway toward Hannah's room, where something heavy had fallen on the floor and ripped open the door in an instant. The bed was empty. She could feel this cold chill in her bones. Hannah! Angela howled. The window was still closed. Where was her sister? She took another step, then froze again. There, from beneath the bed, she could see a foot sticking out. Angela ran over to the side of the bed and slowly pulled her sister out. She was crying uncontrollably. Shit, Angela thought as she lifted her up and into a hug. Two small hands were grabbing onto her neck as the child buried her face in her shoulder. Angela knew just how much she had fucked up, but didn't say anything for the moment. She let her sister cry as she moved her toward the door. I'm so sorry. A muffled voice reached her ears as the sobs slowly subsided. It's okay, Hannah. Everything is fine. How about you sleep in my bed tonight, She could feel the head still buried in her top, moving up and down.
lied to Mom. I told her it was you who took her makeup last week.
Angela couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, she thought, as she slowly moved with her sister toward her own room. Don't worry about that. Just tell her tomorrow, and I'm sure you'll be forgiven, she mumbled. Maybe, if she was lucky, Daddy Longlegs would take her, Angela thought with a wry grin. It might be preferable to whatever Mom would do to her once Hannah told her about that bedtime story.